Hello everyone, welcome back to Pega tutorials. Today we are going to look at the login process. In the previous session, we understood how to perform the registration process, right? Now, in our today's session, let's say for example, if the user is trying to log in with his credential, if the user is an existing user, okay, we should take him to the next page. If the user is not an existing user, we need to throw an error message saying that the user does not exist, right? So this is the use case which we are going to look at how to implement. Okay, as part of this use case implementation, I'll be using some data pages. I'll be using a validate rule. Okay, so these are the rules that we are going to use in order to achieve this particular use case, right? Okay, so let us jump into our use case now. Anyhow, you see on that day, yeah, in the previous session, I have shown how to create a new account or how to register, right? Or how to save the details into the table. So if you see here, I have collected the employee details and I have saved the employee details, right? Now, if you go to the data type, I could see there is a record. Okay, the employee record in the table we had. Okay, this is the record we had. Now okay, so here actually we need one more field. We require two more fields, or otherwise we'll do yeah, we require two more fields actually. So one is username and password. Okay, those are the two fields which are required. So what I'll do is I'll go and add those two fields into my data type itself. In the data model, we can go and add the fields, right? Let us add the fields. What are the fields that you require? Username and password, right? So these are the fields that you require. So let us add those fields now. Okay, so let me submit it. So I have added these two fields into my employee data type. Now once after adding it, let me go to the records. So here I am not able to see that username and password columns, right? So what should I do in that case? I need to go to your actions menu, click on the edit columns. Let us include those two fields as well. Okay. You need username and password, right? So these are the two fields which has to be included. So how you can go and include them here? See, are we getting them or not? I just went and I opened edit columns and I did nothing here, right? Okay, I just opened it. I clicked on submit button. So I'm able to see them here. Now this username and password, let's say for example, I'm just going and entering the values over here. Okay. For username, let's say I'm providing as Rahul and the password is, let's say, I'm giving some password here. Let's say 123, I'm giving the password, right? Yeah. Now let me click on save. Done. Okay. So I have provided the username and password into the employee data type itself. Okay. Now, whenever the user is trying to log in with this particular username and password, we should allow him to go and access the system. Otherwise, we should throw an error message saying that user does not exist or we are not able to recognize your username and password. That is the error message we have to go and display it. Okay. Now let's see how we can go and achieve this particular use case now. So let's go to our case type, open the case type. So here we have the login step, right? So under this identify user stage, I could see authenticate user process. Under the process, we had this login step. Okay. Now we need to configure, first of all, uh, to provide the username and password, we should be ready with our login form, right? Okay. So for that, I'm going to create a login form. So let us go and configure the form now. Configure the login form. So what are the fields that are required in the login form? Username and password fields. But where I have gone and added those fields into the employee data type, right? And previously, if you remember, I have already created a field called employee field. If you remember, I have already created a property called employee property. I will be going to make use of the same property. Okay, so how do you make use of it? Let's go to the field section here. Okay, let us go to the field section and let's try to add that employee data type over here. I mean, employee field over here. Okay, right now I have specified the employee field. I have added this field into my login view. I mean, into my login view itself. I mean, we are trying to create a login view, right? So, but basically, this employee data type has many other fields, not only the username and password. It has rest of the fields, but we require only these two, right? So in that case, how do we get only those two? Okay. So let us create the view now. We will be going to create a new view. Select open here. Click on the open and specify the name of the login name. I mean, specify the view name. Login is the view name. Okay, let's click on create. So the login view is getting generated in the background. Now, if you look at the login view is having all the data. I mean, all the fields, right? Employee ID name. But as I said, we require only username and password. We do not require these rest of the things. So let's go and delete them. Okay, we don't need them, right? So we'll go and delete them now. So I have deleted them. Okay, so let's go and submit now. That's it. So with that, we are ready with our login view. Okay, you can just check. You can cross check whether the login view has got generated or not. So let us click on save and run now. So you should be able to see what exactly the login view, you should be able to see it. So let us click on create. Are we able to see the login view or not? Yes. Now the user, whatever the username and password that he is providing here, once he clicks on submit, if the user is an existing user, okay, it should proceed to the next step. Okay, if we have a next step after this, then it should proceed. If we have a next process, then it should proceed to the next process. Or if there is no process, it will proceed to the next stage, right? Yeah. If the user does not exist, we need to throw an error message saying that user does not exist. Okay, right. Now how are we going to achieve this now? See, whatever the username and password that I enter, let's say for example, I'm saying Rahul and the password as 123. I'm not going to click on submit. Let me click on save. So once you click on save, this data will be available on the clipboard itself, right? So when you open the clipboard, now you just look for the information. So we actually have created a case and the case is having some case ID here, L-2001, right? Now, if you look at, this is the case ID we had, right? Now, under the user pages, you just need to look for which page exactly, PY work page. Under PY work page, you'll be having your employee page. Now, let me click, I mean, that information where it is exactly available. Is it available on the employee page? Obviously, right? So you see here, username and the password, we can see on the employee page itself, right? Mm. Now, we need to check. We need to check this data with your database, whether this data is existing in your database, then you are a valid user, right? So you need to fetch the data from the database and you need to match the data with this particular data. If both are matching, yes, that's fine, right? Yeah. So how do you work? Now, how do you go and try to achieve this thing? So for this, I will be making use of your data pages concepts itself. I mean, I'll be making use of data page itself. So if you look at, I have something called, I mean, under the employee class, I had something called a data page. Okay, let me look for a data page here. So there are three data pages, but I will be making use of your list data page. Okay, so let me make use of list. We need to check, we need to get all the records from the table, right? And we need to match with each of the record. If there is a match, then he's an existing user. If there is no match, then he's not an existing user, right? Okay, now let us open this list data page here. Okay, and now, yeah, let me try to run this list data page. If you see the list data page structure is having as list and the object type as employee here, and the mode is read only. And you see the data source what we had, report definition, right? Let me open the report definition here. So the report definition is being referred from the data page, right? Now coming to the report definition, actually, let me open the report definition here. You see, we had all the fields, right? But strictly speaking, I mean, I require only the username and the password. I mean, do I have username and password here? Yes, these are the two fields that I need, right? So whenever you run the report definition, it is going to return me the record actually, which is there in the database. Okay, it is going to return me the record actually. See, there is only one record in my database table. So that is the one record we have got. We need this username and password, yes or no? Right. Okay, so let it be. So now this particular report definition is being referred from this data page, right? So let me also go and run this particular data page over here. So from the actions menu, you can click on run. So let us click on run and just check whether are we able to get that record or not. See, under the pre-x results page list property, you could see there is only one result we had. Okay, I'm able to get that employee details or not, whose username and password also I'm able to get it here, right? And there is one property actually which is helpful for me, px result count. So what is the result count here? 1. That means we had only one record, right? Yeah, we had only one record. Right now there is only one record in the DB table. There might be multiple records also, right? In that case, when you try to run this data page, you will be getting the result count as a 2 or 3 or 4, right? Based on the number of records that what you have in your DB, right? Okay. So this property is helpful. For example, if there is no employee exist, okay, so whatever the username and password that you entered and that you are trying to check with the DB and there is no match, that means the result count should be of what? Okay, it should be of 0 in that case. So I will be passing the username and password to this data page, okay, as a parameter. So if that username and password exist, you should get the result count as 1. If not, if it doesn't exist, you should get the result count as 0. So let us try to implement this now. For example, you see this is the data page, right? Hmm. Let me define some parameters here for this data page. What are the parameters that you need to define? Let's say we need username and we need password, right? So let us define these two parameters. Okay, I defined them. So this data page, so okay, let me does not give any space here. Okay, save. Now this data page has two parameters. So whenever you run this data page, now it will be expecting what those two parameters, username and password. Now what I'll do, I'll pass the username and password. So whatever the values that I pass to the data page, these values needs to be passed to your report definition even, right? Because which is ultimately returning your records, the report definition. So what you have to do is in the report definition, even you have to define those two parameters. Okay. So one is your username. Okay. And the data type is, let's go with your text here. And the other one is your password, right? Yeah, password, whose data type is also text. Okay. So I even have defined the parameters in the report definition because the reason here we want to get the details of the particular user, right? Uh, yeah. So in the report definition, so now you define the parameters in the report definition. So whenever you run the report definition, see, actually, it's not asking for the parameters here, right? It's directly getting the result. But actually, it should we should filter this particular report definition based on those two parameters. So when I say filter in the sense, you have to add the filtering conditions here, right? So let's say I'm going to add the filtering condition. So what is the filtering condition here? The filtering condition is you need to filter based on what? Username, right? A username and the password itself. So let me add one more filter here and the password, right? So let us provide the password here. Okay. So username is equals to the parameter value, whatever we pass that we have to check here itself. How do you check param dot username? Okay. Whether that username is equals to param dot username. So whatever the parameter that we are passing to this report definition, that parameter value and our username, which is there in the database, if they are matching, okay, or not, we are checking. Okay, param dot password. Now this time, yeah. So I have saved it. I have saved this report definition. Now you see this report definition, anyhow, you are referring from where? From the data page, right? Okay, this is where you are referring it. Now this report definition is having two parameters. So whenever you refer this report definition from the data page, obviously, will it expect those two parameters here or not? Okay. So these are the parameters of what exactly? A report definition rule. Okay. These are the two parameters of your report definition rule. So you need to pass the values to this report definition rule. So from where you are going to get the values? Okay. Anyhow, again in the data page also we define two parameters, right? Those two parameter values only we have to pass it here. So how do you refer those two parameters here of the data page? You should say param dot username and as well param dot password. So this is how you refer it. Okay. Now let me click on submit. That's it. Now save it. Okay. So with that, we are done with the configuration. So now let's say, now let us run this data page and just check. Now, if I am giving the username as Rahul and the password as 123, so there is a record in the table. So I should get that record. So the result count should be what here? It should be 1. Now let's say if I'm giving some other username, okay. For example, let's say I'm giving Ramesh and the password as 123. Now if I run the data page, the result count should be of what here? A 0. So that means there is no user with this particular username and password, right? Yeah. So by this result count only, we will decide whether a user is an existing user or he is a new user. Okay, if he's an existing user, yes, we will allow him to go and access the other parts of the application. Otherwise, we will throw an error message saying that you are not an existing user, right? Okay, so fine. Now the point is, how are we going to see as the thing whenever you click on the login button, I mean the login form submit button. So at that moment, the validation has to happen, right? At that moment, the validation has to happen. So for that case, I will be going to make use of your validate rule. Okay, what I will be making use of? Your validate rule. So where I will be going to define that validate rule into which class? Into your leave request class itself. Let us create a validate rule. How do you create? Validate rule will be falling under which category? Under process category. You see validate rule here, right? Let us click on the validate rule. Now let me give name to this validate rule. I'm giving the name as authenticate user. Okay, this is my validate rule. Let us create and open it. Okay, so once you create this validate rule, so what actually you are going to do is you are going to refer that particular data page into this validate rule. So how would you go and refer that data page into your validate rule? So for that reason, what is the data page that we have to refer it? Let me expand. Yeah, you could see, right? D underscore employee list, right? This is the data page. Now in the pages and classes tab, I will go and declare the data page D underscore employee list. So you know this data page, if whenever you see, it's a structure is of list, right? So whenever you run the data page, you could see that, just a moment. Okay, let me enter the value, and you could see that the px obj class for this uh, data page, what you see here, code pega list, right? So now this code pega list you need to specify here, where in the validate rule. So d underscore employee list is of which class? Code pega list. Okay, code pega list, right? So I declared this data page in my validate rule. Now how are we going to use that? How are we going to refer that data page in my validate rule here? So basically, on which property you need to throw the error message? Okay, on which property if the user does not exist? So where you want to throw that error message, onto which property, whether it is onto the username or password. So let us say I'm selecting, I want to throw the error message onto the password. Now in that case, you need to select here employee dot password itself. Okay, let me choose password. Okay, and let us add the condition. Let us add the condition. So in the condition, I'm going to choose a function here. Okay, so what is that function? Expression evaluates to true. Let us choose this function. Okay, whenever I choose this function, I'm getting a expression builder. So let us use this expression builder to define the expression. Okay, yeah. So let me click on the settings icon here. And what is that expression that we are going to define here? I mean, basically here I'm going to use that data page. Okay, so what is the data page? D underscore employee list. This is the data page. And you know this data page is taking two parameters. I mean, we define two parameters, no? So let us pass those parameters. So what are those parameters? Username, right? Username is one parameter and the password is another parameter. So now you need to pass the username and the password to this data page. So how do you go and pass? So dynamically you have to pass it, right? So whenever see from the case you are providing the username and password, and this information is on the clipboard, right? Yes or no? This information is on the clipboard. That means it is there on pyworkpage.employee. So this is the data that we have to pass to the data page. So how do you refer this particular thing in that expression? So that is the question here. Now, how do you refer? Simply you should say what? You should say pyworkpage dot, okay, pyworkpage dot username, right? That is one parameter. And pyworkpage dot, it's not directly pyworkpage, it is pyworkpage dot employee dot, right? So there is an embedded page actually. Okay. And here also py workpage dot employee dot password, right? So these are the values that you need to pass to these two parameters. Dynamically, we are getting it, right? So whatever the user that he has entered as username and password, that those values we are passing as a parameter to this data page. Now this data page, what it does, if this user exists, then it returns the result count as what? Result count as 1. If it returns the result count as 0 means he is not an existing user, right? So here we have to use that px result count property. Now you should say dot px result count. If it is equals to 0 means what is the meaning of it? The user does not exist, right? Px result count. You see, whenever I run this data page, okay, whenever you run this data page, what are you getting actually? So let's say I'm passing Rahul here and the password as 123. Okay, whenever you run this data page, what is that I'm getting here? Mhm. You see, right? The px result count value is 1. That means this user exists, right? So this px result count we are using. Okay, so where we are using actually here we are using it dot px result count. Okay, which is equals to 0 or not. If it is equals to 0 means the user does not exist. So let me click on submit here. Okay, I submitted it, right? So, so here what is the error message that we want to display? If this expression, if it evaluates to true, if it evaluates to true, then what is that error message we have to display it? Simply, let's say I am going to throw this error message. We do not recognize 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 your username and or your password. This is the error message that we want to display it. Okay, yeah. So now let me try to put it this string in the double quotes. Yeah, let me now try to click on the, but before that let me copy this entire expression here. Let me click on submit now. Okay, so I'm able to define the expression. See, if d underscore employee list, see I'm passing the value for username and for the password, right? If the result count equal to 0 means then we need to display what? An error message. We do not recognize your username or password, right? So now let us click on save. And whenever I'm clicking on save, it is giving me what? An error. Because you see, I was using in this expression, I was using this py workpage dot employee. So it was not able to recognize this py workpage. Okay, it is trying to find this employee property in the base class. It is looking for this employee property in the base class. The reason we did not declare the py workpage. Let us also even declare the py workpage here. So how do you declare py workpage? Okay, and it is of which class? It is of your ABC class, right? So ABC. Let me ABC. Yeah, leave request class. Sorry. Okay. Now let me click on save. So with that, the error has resolved. So I'm ready with my validate rule. And where this validate rule, once you create, where you need to configure it. See, obviously, when you click on the submit button of this login form, the flow action of this login form has to get executed, right? So in the flow action itself, I will go and call this validate rule of this login form. So how do you call it means? Let me close these all things here. Okay, just let me go to your the flow action of your login form here. So what is that flow action you had? Login, right? Let us open this flow action. Now in this flow action, okay, there is a tab called validation tab. Now let's go and call that validation rule. Okay, I mean validate rule here. That's it. So we are done with the configurations. Okay, yeah, you can just go and test the things now. Okay, you can go and test the things. Now let's say for example, if I am giving the username as something called Ramesh, and if I'm trying in this way, obviously in that case, it should throw me an error message, right? Whenever you click the submit button, what happens? The validate rule which we configured on the login flow action will be triggered, right? Let me click on the submit now. So whenever I'm trying to click on the submit, it is saying that we do not recognize your username and our password because we don't have this user right in the database. Now, if I try to log in as Rahul and if I submit, it should allow me now. It should not give me any error message. See, it is allowing me, right? Okay. So that is how you can work with your authentication process or the login process. Hope you're all clear with this particular use case. For more use cases, please like and subscribe my channel. So which will motivate us, right, to do these particular recordings and to upload these recordings in our channel. Okay. So thank you all. See you soon.